Hello aspirants, very good morning to all of you. So friends, welcome back to Anthropology PYQ series on SRIRAM's IAS platform. So friends, it's me, your Dr. Suresh Guramkunda, your anthropology guide and mentor. So friends, as a part of our Anthropology PYQ series, we were discussing UPSC 2025 Civil Services Examination Paper 1. So where we are picking the questions and we are trying to solve those things. And we are not only simply solving those things, we are also trying to learn that. And apart from that, what's our objective? So can you able to recollect our objective? Let's decode every question and let's master every concept. So that's the objective of our discussion and our series. So friends, here first we have to just understand the basic meaning of the question, and then we have to just address the demand of the question, and then we have to just learn the concept. So that's the core objective of us. So first, if you see from our today's discussion point of view, so here let's try to begin the discussion with the question of the day. The question of the day with us is this. So look at the question and listen the question carefully. So first, if you see the question, what are the major theories proposed in support of the origin of the food production, and how the change in the subsistence economy brought revolution during this period? So this is the question is all about. This is what the question is all about. So if you happen to just look at the question, so two things you have to observe here. So one is that the question is asking us to just describe or discuss about the theories of origin of the food production. That's one thing. And then if you keenly observe in the question, they're talking about revolution during this period. So you have to just catch this one. So you should understand what is this period that is being referred here, right? So that's very, very important aspect, because if you can understand this, so there you can further understand the core concept here, right? So what is this period? You have to remember. So that's one thing. Now, what is this period that is being referred here? The period, that's nothing but it's the Neolithic period that they are referring, because in the early Neolithic period, the concept of origin of food has been begun. So you have to just catch that thing. So the question is all about, it's a beautiful admixture of the concept from the stages of evolution of culture and with that of the economic organization, right? So a very good morning to all of you. So again, once again, those who have joined in Android. So now the question has been picked, and the question is a beautiful blend of the interlinkage of the different topics. So one is from the stages of cultural evolution, that's the Neolithic evolution, and second thing is with respect to the unit 3, where you can have economic organization. In that, like we have different modes of subsistence. So from that portion of the syllabus, the question has been picked and asked. So there were so many students like who were getting astonished that from which portion or from where the question has been given. So if you happen to observe, seems this year's UPSC Anthropology Paper 1 setter is very much fond of the Ember and Ember textbook. So it seems like that, because if you check the questions, most of the questions have relevance, and they are interlinked, and they are just revolving around one central theme only. So I'll just make a video on that, like to decode by decoding how the question paper has been set. But nevertheless, where you can see the question and where you can see the concept means, you can see this particular concept, that is the theory of origin of food and food production in the Ember and Ember textbooks. So that's one clarification that I can give. Now, let's proceed towards how we can approach to the answer. So how you can approach to the answer? So try to just, let's think about the approach of the answer. So in the very introduction, what you can do, in the introduction, you can talk about the Neolithic period that they are referring as during this period. So you can say, you can talk about Neolithic period, and you can slowly introduce that. In the early Neolithic period, the concept of origin of food production has been begun. And how did this origin of food, or why this origin of food happened in the Neolithic period? So that's how you can introduce in the introduction part of your answer. Then later on, you can jump to the chief demand of the question in the body portion. So where what you can do, you can simply discuss, enumerate major theories of origin of food production, and then you can discuss each one in very brief manner. So that's one. So then at the end, in the second part of the answer, you can further explain this thing, how the change in the subsistence economy brought revolution in Neolithic period. So you can just discuss about that. So what were the various changes that has happened during this period? So this is how you can say, and then basically you can conclude. So let's see the basic structure and basic concept behind this particular aspect or question. So first, let's see the introduction portion of the question. So as I have said, this period here refers to Neolithic period, so that you have to remember. So let's start by understanding from the Neolithic revolution point of view onwards. So if you happen to see, look here carefully. So Neolithic revolution marks the fundamental transformation in the human cultural evolution. So why Neolithic revolution has been marked as the fundamental transformation in the human evolution? Because it is characterized by a shift from a nomadic hunting-gathering economy to a settled life. So this is a huge transformation that has occurred in the Neolithic revolution or Neolithic evolution period. So what has this has done? So which has enabled by the origin of food production. So this is one thing that you have to just pick and mention in the introduction portion. So again, the origin of food production, how did it happen? It happened through agriculture and it happened through domestication of the animals. So these things you have to keep in mind. So what happened in the Neolithic evolution period? So in the Neolithic evolution period, there was a transformative shift from the nomadic and hunting-gathering type of subsistence, mode of subsistence, to a settled way of life. So once man has been settled, so there are certain conditions that are accompanied by that. So what are those conditions? First thing, so man tried to simply and systematically try to domesticate the animals. So once he domesticated the animals, slowly he started utilizing the cattle or the domesticated animals for his purposes. Then what he has done, then slowly he started going towards the agricultural aspects, cultivation. So he started. So through this, he started developing or producing the food. So this has happened in the basically the early Neolithic period. So that means in very simple fashion to say, when did the origin of food production took place in the cultural evolution means it has happened in the early Neolithic period, right? So that's one thing you have to remember. So this is further linked with some characteristics. What were those characteristics? Which one is sedentary lifestyle, sedentism. Second one is the storage pottery. Third one, domestication of animal. Then fourth one, the labor specialization. So they were all nothing but some of the important characteristic development that have took place during the early Neolithic period, right? So how did these factors help in the origin of food production? Now you just try to understand this logic. Earlier, human beings or the man used to just in search of the food, he used to move from one place to another place. Then what's happening in this period? So human beings have settled at one place. When he has settled at one place, then what he has to do? He has to think for the production of the food, because for the sustenance, we need to have food. So there what has happened? So first and foremost thing, what he has done, he domesticated the animals. Then what he has done? So to store whatever the products that he is getting from the animals and all those things, he started developing storage pottery. So pottery development has also been took place. Then what has happened? So whatever the products that he is getting from the animals or cattle, they weren't sufficient and they weren't enough for his survival. So he started producing the food by himself. Be it could be the wheat, be it could be the barley, be it could be all such kind of the sheep or all such things he started producing. So that's how the food production has been took place in the early Neolithic period. So that's what you have to remember categorically here in this perspective. Now, let's see. So further what we can understand. So the sedentary lifestyle, then the domestication of animals and the origin of food marks the beginning of the surplus economy. So from here onwards, in the Neolithic evolution period, what has happened? Surplus economy has started to begin. And then along with this surplus economy, so there was a kind of demographic expansion have occurred. So why demographic expansion? Because people have started getting good amount of food, good nutritious food, so good availability of food, so good chances of survival. So that's how surplus economy and then demographic expansion and further the foundation of the village societies that have took place. So once the village societies have started founding up, then slowly these village societies have been transformed to cultural civilizations. So that's how these changes have took place. So try to catch this particular aspect and try to understand this. Now, can you able to just recollect and can you able to just understand the concept? So when did the origin of food took place? In which stage of cultural evolution? Now you text in the chat box so that let's see have you catched the point or not. So try to answer this question. When or in which phase of cultural evolution the origin of food production took place? So type in the chat box. Then let's proceed further and let's see what are the various major theories that are there concerned with the food production. So first, if we happen to see the major theories of food production, so all the major theories that are there with that propose about how the food production might have happened, so there anthropologists and archaeologists, so all of them, they try to classify these theories into three important categories. Okay, what are those categories? First set of theories are nothing but environmental or locational theories. That's one theory, group of theories. Then second, social and co-evolutionary theories. Social theories, this is the second group of theories. Then demographic theories. So this is the third category of the theories. So what does this environmental and locational theory says? So according to these theories, how food production or how origin of food production took place, right? So let's see. So these theories argues that they will generally focus on climate change or the natural distribution of the wild resources as the primary catalysts. So try to understand this. We are discussing about environmental theory and locational theory. So in environment, climate is one thing that shapes various aspects. Other thing, the availability and distribution of the resources is another important thing from the location point of view. So both of these aspects, environment and location, that is the climate change and the distribution of the resources, they paved way as the primary catalysts. And wherever the climate favored and wherever the resources were available, so at that place and during that phase of the human evolution, so the food production began. So that's what they advocate, right? Then if you see social and co-evolutionary theories, what does this theories advocate? So we are talking about social theories, right? So now look here carefully. So these theories look beyond the simple subsistence needs. What does they focus? They focuses on social competition or the long-term unintentional relationship between the humans and the domestication species. So this theories argues that there is a concept called as co-evolution. What is this co-evolution? Evolution of human beings along with the domesticated animals. So they said that this theory says that so social competition or long-term unintentional relationship between humans and domesticated species of animals that led for the production of the food. Now you try to catch this logic. Now human beings have got the cattle, let's say domesticated animals, sheep, cattle or the pigs, all such kind of things. Now they have got. Now these animals also have to be survived. So for them, let's say for example, if humans are being, they are just being relied on these animals, let's think about that. What about those animals? Those animals need to have food. So for that, we have to make some sort of the food production. So that's where, so there was a kind of subsistence needs, and there was further social competition for the long-term existence. So that was one thing. Then demographic theories. What does these demographic theories argue? Demographic theories, they argue that increasing population size relative to resources was a core stress that compelled the people to adapt more intensive food production strategy. So we have one thing we have understood here is that during the Neolithic evolution phase, there was demographic expansion. Can you able to recollect that? So when demographic expansion took place, that means when population size started increasing, so there was a kind of stress that has been created on the nature. So here, this stress which has been created on the nature that compelled the people to move towards production of more and more food. So more demand and more stress, so that led to more production. So that's how the demographic theories argues. So I hope you can catch the essence of the three categories of the theories of food production, right? Now, what are those theories which belongs to these categories? Let's see now. So just have a glance of the theories that are there under these categories. So first, if you happen to see from the perspective of environmental and locational theories, so there are two important theories for us. So one is nothing but oasis theory, which has been proposed by V.G. Child. So V.G. Child belongs to which school of anthropological thought? You can type in the chat box. V.G. Child. So V.G. Child belongs to which school of anthropological thought? Is he a classical evolutionist, neo-evolutionist, functionalist, or structuralist? Try to comment in the chat box. V.G. Child, right. Then we have other theory that is known as hilly flanks theory, which has been proposed by Robert Braidwood. So Robert Braidwood was one scholar who proposed the concept of hilly flanks theory. Let's try to understand them one by one. So now you try to just catch up what are the theories that are there in this. Then next, we have social and co-evolutionary theories. So what are these social and co-evolutionary theories? So first thing, feasting theory, which has been proposed by Brian Haddon. So Brian Haddon was an archaeologist who he proposed the feasting theory. Then evolutionary or intentionality theory that has been proposed by David Rindos. So this is another important theory under social and culture co-evolutionary theories. Then we have demographic theories. So one theory has been proposed by a group of scholars like Mark Cohen and Louis Bainford. So both of them together, they proposed demographic pressure theory. Try to catch the essence, demographic pressure theory, right? So then Louis Bainford, he himself, he developed the marginal zone theory. So these are different theories of origin of the food production, right? So we have to understand these theories in detail, right? So we are getting the answers. So our first question was, in which phase of the cultural evolution the food production or origin of food production took place? So answer for that question was the Neolithic age, Neolithic phase, Neolithic age. So early Neolithic period. So very good. So very good, Venushree, Pragnya, aspirant, and Shipradikari. So all of you have mentioned right. And then the next question was, so V.G. Child belongs to which school of anthropological thought? So good, we are getting responses from Kumar Janmejai. So Kumar Neo is saying that neo-evolutionary stage, and Venushree is saying that neo-evolutionary school. So very good. So friends, so the answer for the question was like V.G. Child belongs to neo-evolutionary school of thought. Okay, so classical evolutionism and neo-evolutionism. So V.G. Child belongs to neo-evolutionism phase. So then let's move further and let's try to understand about the theories in detail, right? So first, let's start with the environmental and locational theories. Under that, let's start with oasis theory. So what is this oasis theory? So first, if you see from the perspective of this, so this theory has been proposed by V.G. Child, a classical neo-evolutionist. So what he is trying to suggest, so he is trying to start about, he is trying to talk about something that the food production has been took place in and around the oases and the river valleys. So that's what he is trying to pitch. So how he is putting his theory, how he is trying to just explain his theory. Now look here, what is the premise that he says? So in the post-ice age climate change forced the humans, plants and animals to congregate in a close proximity around shrinking water sources. So that's the premise. So what has happened in basically the post-ice age, the climate change forced all the living organisms, be it could be plants, be it could be animals, be it could be humans, to congregate closely in a close proximity around the shrinking water resources. What are the water resources that are available for us at during that time period? So one was in the desertic places, oases, and in the plain areas, river valleys. So people started congregating around that. Then what has happened? Then why this congregation has happened, specifically what kind of climate change took place? So there was desiccation or drying. So climate was becoming dry or desiccated. So when we lack of hydration or moisture, that is known as desiccation. So then what's the mechanism? So what's the mechanism here? This close proximity or symbiosis has led to intimate knowledge of the species, facilitating the domestication out of mutual necessity for survival. So now what has happened? Due to climate change, the climate has forced all the living organisms to come together near oases and the river valleys. So their plants came to one place, animals came to one place, and the human beings came to one place. Then after that, what has happened? Then this facilitated domestication of the one another. So here, let's see, for example, plants started relying on the human beings. So human beings started watering the plants, and then animals have started relying on the humans. So the human beings started feeding the animals, and in return, so human beings have started depending upon the plants as well as animals for their subsistence. So that's how he says that. So this symbiosis has facilitated for the production of the food. And then how further things have happened? Now look here to status. Largely discredited as the modern climate data suggested, the region was not universally getting drier at the critical time. So there are some sort of the criticisms also that the region was not universally getting drier. So some places was getting drier, but not all the phases. So that was one thing. So this theory proposed by V.G. Child says that, so the food production has been started in and around the water sources, oases in the deserts and river valleys in the plain areas. So that's what his basic theory was all about, right? So then let's see further, and let's move towards hilly flanks theory that has been proposed by Robert Braidwood. So Robert Braidwood proposed the hilly flanks theory. So try to catch the essence. So hilly flank. So now this theory is also popularly known as nuclear zone hypothesis. So why it is called as nuclear zone hypothesis? Why it is called as hilly flank theory? Let's try to understand now. So now look at the premise, what he is trying to say. So what he says is that agriculture began in the hilly flanks of the Taurus and Zagros mountains. So these areas he picked, and his observation was in and around this hilly flanky areas. So he said that agriculture began in the hilly flanks of these mountainous regions. So where what has happened? The area where the wild ancestors of early domesticates like wheat, barley, sheep, goat naturally thrived. So he observed that the early ancestors have domesticated wheat, barley. That means they started producing wheat, barley, sheep, and goats, all those things in this particular area. So that's what his observation. So what does he says? How this mechanism took place? So he says that people living in this natural habitat zone were culturally and technologically ready, and the shift was a result of gradual build-up of the cultural knowledge and experimentation, and not as a climatic crisis. So what he is trying to say is that the origin of food production did not took place due to climatic crisis. So what V.G. Child said. So he is criticizing, and he is a critic of the V.G. Child's concept of the theory of the origin of the culture as a climatic crisis. So what he is trying to say that, so there is a kind of concept called as natural habitat zone. Habitat means the place where an organism lives, isn't it? So the natural habitat zone concept. So in the natural habitats, so there itself they started developing technologically, they started developing culturally, and then there was a shift towards the gradual build-up of the cultural knowledge. So when the cultural knowledge developed among the human beings, they systematically started developing the food and food production. So that's how he is trying to pitch. So there he is calling it as one thing that the natural habitat zone or the nuclear zone, that means in a particular zone, there we can expect the production of the food. So nucleus means at the center, the zone where food production has taken place. So there he is calling it as nuclear zone. So what is that zone? So that zone is nothing but natural habitats of human beings or plants and animals. And this theory he called it as hilly flanks theory because he observed and he is taking the reference of the these hilly flanks like Taurus and Zagros mountains. So try to just refer and just comment in the chat box. So where does this Taurus and Zagros mountains are located? So try to just refer and give your answers in the chat box. Taurus and Zagros mountains are located in which country or in which continent? So try to mark it and mention it. So this is one theory by our Robert Braidwood. So what is this theory? Hilly flanks theory. Now let's move further and let's try to understand the other theory. So where we have another theory put forwarded by Brian Hayden. So Brian Hayden proposed one theory that is known as the feasting theory. So what is this feasting theory is all about? Feasting theory is a kind of demographic theory. So what does this says? So it's a kind of social theory, right? So what's the basic premise of this particular theory? Now look here carefully. So agriculture was driven by a desire for social competition and the accumulation of the prestige. So socially, man has started developing the food production for two reasons. One, there was a desire for social competition, and second thing, like the accumulation of the prestige. That means we have to garner prestige in the society. How? When we produce more and more food grains, so there we'll become the jamindars. That means, like in simple fashion to say, we'll become the possessor of the food grains. So then we can hold good prestige in the society. And apart from that, like there was a social competition for these two reasons, so man started going for the food production. Then mechanism, what was the basic mechanism? So the ambitious individuals or the groups needed to generate large predictable food surpluses for competitive feasting ceremonies and alliances. So one thing, what they were trying to do, so in order to just go for the feasting, ceremonies and making alliances and all those things, so ambitious groups or individuals have started generating large food surpluses. So this need for creating food surplus has led to origin of more food production. So that's one thing, right? So then further, the feasting theory also says that this need for the surplus drove a kind of shift towards predictable and highly yield food production methods, that is farming. So this is where they started mentioning, and this is how the Brian Hayden talked about the feasting theory. So for competitive feasting, for ceremonies and for making more alliances, they started producing the food. So that's what this is, a type of social theory. So you have to catch the essence here, right? So that's with respect to the feasting theory. So we are getting the responses. So the question was, where does the Taurus and Zagros mountains are located? So what's the first answer for us? So Vinishri is saying that West Asian region due to collision of Eurasian plate and Arabian plate. Very good. So Prajna is mentioning that Taurus Mountains in the Turkey and Zagros Mountains in the Iran, Iraq and southern Turkey. Very good. So both of you are mentioning the reasons. So you have mentioned countries and you have mentioned the reason. Very good. So this is the exact thing, right? So in the West Asian region, so where the Turkey as well as Iran, Iraq, they are there. So there we can see the Taurus and Zagros Mountains. So this area is also known as Fertile Crescent. So you should catch that. The Fertile Crescent is something that is very, very, very important. Mark somewhere, because this has some sort of relevance in the future coming up questions also. So the Fertile Crescent. So try to read about Fertile Crescent area. Right now, let's move further and let's try to check the other aspects. Evolutionary theory. So this evolutionary theory is also known as co-evolutionary theory, which has been proposed by David Rindos. So we are discussing about social and co-evolutionary theories. So what David Rindos says, David Rindos gives a premise. What's his premise is that domestication was not a conscious, sudden invention. But how domestication started? Domestication started as a long co-evolutionary process between humans and the plants as well as the animals. So he's trying to pitch this thing. He's trying to say that domestication of plants and animals it was not a conscious and sudden invention. Rather, it was a long-term co-evolutionary process where for sustenance of the plants, human beings were necessary. For sustenance of the animals, human beings were necessary. And for sustenance of animals, plants were necessary. And for sustenance of plants, animals and human beings were necessary. That means it's a kind of co-evolutionary aspect. So for sustenance and living of one species, other species was required. So that's how the domestication of animals and plants took place. So that's what the David Rindos is saying. So then what was the mechanism? How food production took place? Now look here. Early humans unintentionally favored plants with desirable traits. Like, let's say for example, collecting non-shattering grain heads which were easier to harvest. So he is trying to put forward this concept that the early humans tried to domesticate those plants with desirable traits. Desirable traits means in the course of evolution, like man might have consumed certain plants with some grains. So these grains might have helped them to survive. So after that, by selecting such kind of desirable traits, plants with desirable traits, man might have favored those plants and he might have catched them. So that's how he is trying to put. And then over the generations, what has happened? Over the generation, look here, these plants became dependent on the humans for propagation and creating a biological partnership that eventually led full-fledged agriculture. Now, you try to catch the example of, let's say for example, wheat, barley or rice. Now, can you see the presence of rice in the wild areas? Can you see the cultivation, or like in simple fashion to say, growth of wheat, barley in the wild areas as of now? Mostly we cannot see this. Why? Because what he's saying that these plants, like be it could be barley, be it could be wheat, or be it could be rice, so all of them become dependent on the humans for their propagation. So why? Because they require some conditions. Climatic conditions are there, irrigational facilities are there, and apart from that, like nutrient facilities are there, fertilized soil has to be there, and certain conditions are ideal for the growth of that particular crops or plants. So this made that these plants became dependent on the humans for their growth and survival, for their propagation. So that's how he is putting his concept that it's a co-evolutionary process with the plants and human beings. And again, like we can also incorporate animals also into this, right? So this is the co-evolutionary theory that has been proposed by David Rindos, right? So that's how food production took place. Then further, the last theory, that is demographic pressure theory. So this demographic pressure theory has been proposed by our Mark Cohen and we have Lewis Binford. So both of them together proposed the demographic pressure theory. So try to catch pressure. Demography means it's nothing but the concept of systematic description of the demos, people. So population. So population associated aspects. So now you look at the premise according to them. What's the basic premise? So basic premise is that population growth eventually exceeded the capacity of the local environment to support a hunting and gathering lifestyle. So look, the premise is that the population growth eventually exceeded the capacity of the local environment to support the hunting and gathering lifestyle. Then how did the mechanism of food origin started? What does it did? Resulting population. So the resulting population pressure forced the communities to adapt agriculture, which provides higher caloric yield per unit of the land despite requiring significantly more labor. Now, what he is trying to pitch is that in the main course of evolution, there was a demographic pressure that has been created. That means population expansion took place. So when the population expansion took place, then people started moving to other places as there was a core competition in that same place. So then they went to other places, and in other places, this population pressure, it forced the communities to adapt agriculture. And not only adapting agriculture, so when they have adapted agriculture, it started giving them high caloric yield per unit of the land. So thus, despite requiring significantly more labor. So that means like despite requiring more labor, it also started giving them more energy rich kind of diet and food production. So that's what the demographic pressure theory is stating. So the pressure of the population that led to production of the food. So that's the basic essence. So here Lewis Bainford, he brought in another simple concept that is known as marginal zone theory. What is this marginal zone theory? It's a basic variety of this demographic pressure theory. So what does this say is, this variant suggests that population pressure in optimal coastal areas, population pressure that has pushed some groups into marginal zones. So where they were forced to innovate to support their numbers in a lesser resource rich setting. So demographic congregation, population congregation at the optimal coastal areas. So it has forced them to create the food production because more people were congregated there, so more food production has to happen there. So that's how they propagated. So this is Lewis Bainford's concept of marginal zone theory. So they were all nothing but different theories of origin of the food production. So just to show you the core concept or various theories of origin of food production. These were all the theories of origin of food production. Environmental and locational theories proposed by, first one was like Oasis theory proposed by V.G. Child, Healy-Flank's theory proposed by Robert Brainwood, and social and co-evolutionary theories proposed by first one, that is feasting theory proposed by Brian Hedden, and like David Rindo's proposed evolutionary or intentionality theory, and the demographic theories like demographic pressure theory and marginal zone theory. So these were the different theories that you have to just quote and mention in the answer. So try to just check once the Ember and Ember textbook. So there you can find the concept of origin of food production, and from there you can just further enrich the concept. So that's with respect to different theories. Then there is second part of the question. So what's the second part of the question? Look here. How the change in the subsistence economy brought revolution during this period. That means what changes have happened during the early Neolithic phase, so which brought the change in the subsistence economy. So change in the subsistence economy brought the revolution. So what changes? Now look at this. So if you happen to see the shift, basic shift from the food, from foraging to food production triggered so many changes, And these changes brought as a kind of revolution that is known as Neolithic revolution. So this Neolithic evolution period is also known as Neolithic revolution period. Now try to refer and just comment in the chat box stating that which scholar called the Neolithic evolution as Neolithic revolution. So try to verify that and try to mention in the chat box. Which scholar called the Neolithic evolution into Neolithic revolution? So the concept of Neolithic revolution has been invented by whom? That's what the question is. So there was a kind of Neolithic revolution. So why and how did this happen? There was a kind of shift, transformation from food foraging to food production, right? So this triggered the Neolithic revolution, and this Neolithic revolution has transformed the societies in many interconnected ways. So what are those many interconnected ways? So first thing, if you happen to see there, we have got something that is known as sedentism. First thing is that sedentism. So sedentary lifestyle has started developing. What is sedentary lifestyle? So permanent settlements which were replaced by nomadic mobility. So nomadic mobility, nomadism has been replaced by sedentary lifestyle. So that was one humongous change that occurred in the Neolithic evolution period. Then second thing, population growth. So what does this population growth say is like, let's say the reliable food supported larger communities. So people started getting the availability of food. So more the amount of food that is available, so more the population growth occurred. So demographic expansion took place. So first transformation was like with respect to sedentary lifestyle. Second is with respect to population expansion and demographic expansion and demographic growth. Then surplus production of the food. So this is another important change that has happened. So when population is more, to cater this population, so we need to just produce more or surplus food grains. And that means when we had surplus food grains, what we have to do? We have to store it. So storage, it enabled storage and redistribution and planning accordingly. And now, when we are having surplus food, so we need to store. For storing these grains or food grains which are available, so we started systematically developing pottery. Are you getting that? So pottery. So to store the grains. So big pottery we have started developing it. Then it also led for a kind of development of systematic division of the labor. So where craft, specialization, pottery, weaving, tool industries, all those things started developing. So can you able to connect that? So surplus food production led to division of labor, and thus we started developing various crafts, various pottery, weaving, all those things. Then this further led to a concept of property and inheritance. Now you have food surplus, now you have earned something, now you started weaving, you have started doing pottery and all those things. So later on what has happened, this further led to property, concept of property and inheritance. So there the emergence of the territoriality and lineage systems began in the Neolithic evolution phase. Now this further led to social stratification. What do you mean by social stratification? Strata means layers. Social strata means layers of the society. When you systematically divide different groups of the or population of the society into different hierarchical layers, that process is known as social stratification. So now some group were started to be with the crafts. So craftsmen, then pottery, potter, then weavers. So like that different sections have started developing. So that systematic distribution of people or the society into different hierarchical levels is known as social stratification. So this has begun, and then what has happened? So trade networks developed. So now we have food products, we have the crafts, we have pottery, we have weaver, like cloths, and we have the tools, etc. So with this trade networks developed. So where what we started doing, we systematically started exchange of the crops, then exchange of the animals, and then further crafts, etc. So this further helped us. That's how. Then finally the environmental modification. So slowly what we have started doing, so slightly we have started moving towards developing the irrigational facilities, domestic deforestation and landscape engineering. So this we have started doing it. So that's how all these changes have happened in the Neolithic evolution period. So Neolithic evolution means what? New Stone Age. Neolith means new stone. So systematically V.G. Gordon Childe has called this particular evolutionary phase as Neolithic revolution because it has tremendously transformed the human society in various aspects. So these are all the changes that have took place during the Neolithic evolution period. So try to catch this. So for this reason, so V.G. Childe has called Neolithic evolution as Neolithic revolution. So the answers that have been given there, Pragna, aspirant and Vinishri. So V.G. Childe. So V.G. Childe is the right answer. Very good. So you have to remember that. So this is another important question. So why Neolithic evolution is called as Neolithic revolution? So the answer is this one. So you can remember this, same as the answer for that type of question also, right? So that's with respect to the demand of the question. Then how you can conclude the answer? You can simply conclude by reiterating all this process. You can simply say that the origin of food production, it's not a simple aspect. Rather, it's a multivariate which cannot be studied or explained by a single theory, rather by a group or mix of different theories. Climate change also helps in the production of the food. Then population growth also helped and triggered the production of the food, and the resource pressure and human innovation that further helped in production of the food. So the best thing what we can say that the concept of origin of food is not because of single theory, rather other aspects have also instigated it for the production of the food. So as the community shifted from foraging to farming, they produced surplus. So they entered into settled lifestyle and developed new social roles and technologies. So then finally what we can say, this change in the subsistence economy transformed the human life, paving the way for the villages, trade, social hierarchy, and eventually the rise of the civilization. So that's how the concept of origin of food that led to major shifts or transformation in the human evolution and human transformation. So that's all for the day from my side for this particular question, right? So you have to incorporate all these perspectives and you have to just explain all of them. So hope it is clear to you. So if there are any doubts, you can just type in the chat box now. So further, before we wind up, let's see what we can further see. The question for the next session that we'll be going to take up is this. Question number 7C. Critically discuss the centrality of the African continent in the narrative of human evolution. So this is the question for our next session. So you can just pause the video here and you can just note down the question here and you may just write the answer and you may share the answer in the Telegram channel. So beneath the question that I'll be sharing to you by evening, right? So take up and just pass it here and take down this. Right, now let's see further aspects. So I want to remind you this thing again. Because in the previous session we started our discussion with this quote and now I am ending the discussion with this quote. Try to catch this clearly. Every answer you write is a step closer to the shore of success in your UPSC journey. So start writing and bring change in your preparation. Do not stay idle. So start working. So there is no shortcut to success. When we work hard and when we do things in a smart fashion, then only we can expect the success, right? So yes, we are getting a question. Sir, can we get PDF of today's question? So are you asking for answer, model answer or question? So try to just check it. So are you asking for the question or the model answer? So make it clear. So that's the thing. So if you want to just submit your answers and if you want to just collect the further information, so you can join our Telegram channel. So Anthropology Guide, so you can join through this link or you can join through the QR code mentioned here. So that's all for today from my side, friends. So yes, Pragna is asking for the model answer. So definitely Pragna, I'll share it by evening, right? So first you try to answer the question and then you try to verify the concept from the model answer. So that's all for today from my side, friends. So it's me, your Dr. Suresh Guramkonda. So I'm signing off. Thank you all of you for joining me with this session. We'll meet tomorrow exactly by 11:30 a.m. sharp. So thank you all.